Andrew, welcome to It's Personal Stories. I'm so glad to have you here with us. At It's Personal Stories, we focus on the human side of leadership, the experience and inflection points that shape how leaders grow, adapt, and show up over time. What makes your journey particularly compelling is the breadth of perspective that you bring. You've led across brand, the largest third party management company, worked with a family owned business, and now you sit at the center of innovation on the technology side with FLYR. That gives you a unique vantage point on how our industry is evolving, especially at this intersection of commercial strategy, distribution, and technology. What I'm especially looking forward to today is going a layer deeper, not just on leadership, but how you think about business, how you stay ahead of change, and how you evaluate partners, and how your experiences across these different environments have really shaped your perspective. So, with that as our backdrop, I'm hoping we can start with your journey.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for for having me on. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a fun journey. I'm still, I've got plenty of journey left, but yeah,
I
it's
certainly
been
hope so.
it's been fun. Yeah, look, when I actually went to school for hospitality, and along the way I added, much to my parents' chagrin, an extra undergrad degree in marketing because I thought that was interesting. So that's, I think, helped shape where I went to. Yeah, started in operations. Had to be a GM back then. If you wanted to go anywhere in the hotel business, you had to be a GM. So strove towards that. I think, when you look back, every interaction is always, sometimes there are opportunities that you don't know they're opportunities at the time, but I think if you just work hard and stay true to yourself, they'll open them up. So I got a management training gig with a up and coming GM. A couple months later, I went into a hotel. He went to a flagship and brought me over to the flagship. So that kind of helped me. And being there, then there was a new person that came in, regional VP. I was 25, and he was just brought on, and we were working on a Saturday, just him and I in the office, and asked me a bunch of questions. And then Monday he came in and said, well, I think you'd be good at this new thing called revenue management. It's a special project from the COO, and I think you'd be good at it. So I did that. I was the first revenue manager at IHG back a long time ago.
Wow.
And once again, those opportunities that you don't know where they are. Just was working on a Saturday trying to get through budgets. Did that for a while. He made me a GM later on, because you had to at that point. Then they sold me. I was sold. And went to Bristol Hotels, great company. They found my background in revenue management. Went there and started doing just not just revenue, but distribution and digital, and web was starting. I was the first director of e-commerce there. Then, IG bought Bristol. I went to Maristar, did some more things in distribution revenue management. Then I did go back to IHG because I was complaining to all the brands, because Maristar was one of the largest management companies. I was complaining to all the brands about the OTAs as they were coming up, and they had to do something. I couldn't negotiate my way out of it with just 200 hotels. And IHG called me up and said, come fix it for us. So I did the first OTA deals in the industry, which was fun, and got the opportunity to go work in Europe for 4 years at the IHG headquarters, and got a luxury travel along the way, and sales, and a whole bunch of different things. And then left IHG, went to Omni Hotels as chief commercial officer, then was EVP of commercial, which is chief commercial officer at Aimbridge. And most recently jumped over to the tech side. Didn't want to be the old guy who didn't understand AI. So when it came out, I took a class at MIT, and I started talking to a couple people, and ran into the CEO and founder of Pace Revenue, which is FLYR Hospitality now. And they created a role for me to help me teach them hotel, and they could help teach me AI. So it was a good partnership so far.
Wow. I'm wondering if you can unpack a few things for us, Andrew, because just that journey of
Sure.
being, brand management company, working within a smaller family business. I mean, a large company, certainly Omni, but then also on this tech journey that you're on now. I'm just wondering what you can tell us about the differences and how each of those environments really think about growth.
Yeah, I mean they were very different along the way. It comes down to this industry. Everything comes back to the three entities in every asset: the brand, the manager, and the owner. And I got to experience that in all different ways. And the big brands, there was a lot of rigor. You had to think strategically, globally. You had to take into consideration what the impacts were on different parts of the planet, and make sure you had language support. I mean, a lot of bigger issue
Mhm.
things. Um, but when you were with Omni was their brand, the owner, and the manager all in one. It was really fun to make decisions very, very quickly. I just had started there. We just finished budgets. We're having a drink with the COO, the CEO, the owner, myself, and COO was complaining about a thing on, we used to give door cards for the elite members and they can get coffee and something delivered in the morning. It's like, it's costing me like $60 to get it delivered in New York. Can we change it? And it's like, it's the most highly ranked thing for our loyalty program. We can't change
Mhm.
it. I said, but why don't we just add like a free drink instead
Mhm.
in the bar, so you can eat either or and let it up to the guest. Um, that was the week before Christmas. I checked into the hotel in New York the week after the holidays, and it was done. Not just done there; it was done across the entire brand.
Mhm.
So you've worked at a big brand. Imagine
Yes.
changing a loyalty program piece within 2 weeks. Um, Not just from thought to full execution. That
Yeah.
that that was fun. So yeah, very, very
Mhm.
different. But yeah, I think you have to understand the environment you're in, and there's good reasons on why some of the big brands go very slow. But it's also speed sometimes helps you win. So
For sure. For sure. And what about being in a tech company now? Are there differences there in terms of thoughts about growth?
yeah, I mean, well, we're startup, so growth. We're not talking single digit. Oh, we're going to get 3% rev bar growth. It's can we double revenue? So it's triple digit growth is the expectation. So um, it's been fun. It's been different. I had been working at larger companies. Even Omni was even the 50 some odd hotels. It was a big company, very sophisticated.
Mhm.
Um, I'm still shocked in parts of the world where I'm not just litigating. What my company does right now is revenue management and BI solutions. We're not just saying you should have our system over another one. We're in some cases saying you should do revenue management.
Yeah.
And I thought that argument was finished 20 years ago. Like, you should change your prices.
Mhm.
um so that's been a little bit shocking on how advanced the industry and how far it's come, but also in some places it has not moved at all, and I think that's a detriment to the industry in general.
Mhm. Mhm. No, for sure. I'm just wondering if we can talk a little bit about distribution technology because in my mind, it's really the center of change right now in the business. And given, I know you said you made a very deliberate decision to join FLYR to sort of up level some of your tech skills, but I would love to hear more about how you personally stay current with this fast moving environment that we're all in. And if there's some go to sources you would recommend to our audience to stay current.
Yeah, look, I'm not doing the distribution that I was running distribution for multiple companies, and that was in
Mhm.
and out doing the actual strategies and then the execution. Um, that said, I think what I've been saying for the last 20 years really hasn't changed. You can't get too far behind because it's changing that rapidly. What I tell you now is going to be wrong 6 months from now. I think even more so with AI and how that's
Right.
going to change everything. So, I do, use my network, read as much as I can through LinkedIn and what's going on there. And HSMEI, I think, is another fantastic resource, not just the education and the information they have there in the seminars, but the networking of the people. Um, I don't have to, fortunately, figure out, do as much strategy work, like how am I going to counter this or what am I going to do with that? I have some thoughts on it. Um, so I'm not doing that in the day in and day out, but I think you still have to stay relevant because even as a tech provider, I've got to make sure that whatever I'm providing is going to meet the needs on the distribution front, even, through the revenue management systems. I got to make sure that I've got the right technology, the right performance, the right uh, things within my platform in order to make the hotel successful. So yeah, I do
Yeah.
have to stay up on it, but it's somewhat difficult. There's there's a lot of information out there, and it's always changing. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering if you have any perspective on terms of where the most meaningful innovation is really happening today within our industry or maybe other industries.
well, other industries, there's so much going on in other industries. I think I'm going to jump over that for a second. I think in our industry, believe it or not, things have kind of changed. I think I see the larger independent resorts being at the forefront of more innovation and change. The
Mhm.
brands, it just takes them too long. The pace of change is so rapid that by the time they solve a problem, they've solved 5 years ago's problem. That is an issue. And when I see large independent resorts, they have the means, the resources, and the upside in order to do some really innovative things. I know Peregrine was doing some neat things with how they were approaching stuff. Lowe's is doing some stuff. Even Omni's trying to do some things. But it's these independents that don't have to, not tied to legacy technology as much, can move quickly, that are doing more innovation.
Yeah. I know a lot of the conversation today is, I mean, the rate and inventory piece is kind of mature. I also agree with you that there's places in the world where they're still early on that journey, but it's really around the content and how we're going to gate some content, protect our own channels relative to third parties. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that because that seems to be the center of a conversation today for sure.
I mean, you should always make your direct channels best, and you could come up with a strategy that says I'm going to outsource my distribution. I don't think
Hmm.
that's a great strategy, but I could see why a small company or an independent group might want to do that because it's very expensive if you don't think you're going to have the technology to outsource it to a third party. But I do believe, personally, I would approach it as own the content, own what you can, and then take advantage of what's going to be the big disruptor. And I think it is AI. AI is going to completely disrupt the intermediaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did it myself. I created a Claude app and got the best pricing on a flight within
Hmm.
2 seconds across multiple brands and everything else. And I don't know what I'm doing. Right. So
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
going to be a lot out there that people are going to create their own agents, do very, very quickly. And how can you make sure you're there and there direct,
Right.
where you show up? And I think that's understanding how to get the most out of that is a way to maybe take back some of the control the industry's lost over the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just wondering if we can talk a little bit more just in terms of the breadth of the different types of businesses that you've been involved with and, you know, the differences in terms of priorities. I know you talked about Omni having the full owning everything and how much faster it was to actually get to an implementation. But I'm just wondering if there's different ways that those businesses actually looked at priority setting and, they're different stakeholders and if there's anything
Yeah.
that you can share there.
I think it's the one thing that has probably set our industry up for success long term, and it is the three entities in every asset. We're not an
Mhm,
airline. Airlines lose
mhm,
money for the most
mhm,
part.
mhm,
Um, the hotels. Typically, I've been involved with a lot of hotels. I think I've only known of two in my entire career out of thousands that actually lost money. They might have been happy with their budgets. I get that, but actually
yeah,
lost money.
yeah,
Um, I think it's the competing priorities. And I think that's why it's so hard to get things done and move the industry forward. The brands, for example, they're paid on gross room revenue.
mhm,
There's a lot of things the brands would want to do around groups and meetings and food and beverage and all those conversations. They typically go to the owner and say, "Will you pay us for this?" The owner's like, "No, I'm paying you enough already. You should just do it." So then the brand goes, "Well, I'm getting paid on gross room revenue. I'll just focus on everything on gross room revenue, and that's it."
mhm,
And that's a generalization. There are some brands doing some interesting things, but for the most part, the focus is on their core business, and they're not going to move from that. The owner obviously is trying to maximize the asset, but it depends on the ownership type. If
right,
it's real estate play and they've got a pro forma, it's 5 years or 3.5 years into the pro forma, they're like, I'm not going to put any money into this. I'm trying to flip the asset in another 12 to 18 months.
mhm,
So it becomes a real estate play, not a hospitality play. And then the poor stepchild is the manager, and the management companies are kind of stuck in between, and they're just trying to carve out, and they've got to manage everything and take care of the service and everything else. So it's very much competing priorities, and they're not 100% aligned, as you know.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
that has held us back. Yeah, I think it's helped protect us where we're not going as lost, because airlines can do things that, they lose money. But I think when it comes to speed, innovation, moving things forward, competing priorities, it's tough. I think the brands would like to do a lot of stuff. They only get 5% in most of royalties. 95% of the benefit goes to the owner. Well, they need the owner to pay. And then to try to get, in a big brand, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 owners to all agree on moving forward, it just takes forever. It's hard.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good framing. And I do think understanding where the money is in terms of all of these different players and how you can create some of that mutual value creation is really critical. But I agree with you. Everyone has shareholders for the most part, Andrew, that they've got to deliver value back to. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the equation, including all the third parties have shareholders that they've got to
Mm-hmm.
respond to. So I'd like to move on a little bit about the intermediary conversation. I know you talked about
Sure.
LLMs and how that's going to shift, some of the relevancy of the intermediary space, but I'd love to hear about your thoughts on how that's evolving. Is it going to make more fragmentation, or do you see there's going to be more M&A consolidation activity? What's your point of view there?
I think there'll be both. I think there'll be more fragmentation and there'll be consolidation.
Hmm.
Um, the one thing I've learned over my time is, even if you can see the writing on the wall or something, big companies take a long time to go away. Very, very
Hmm.
seldom do you have a Kodak that is, in the Fortune, 100, and then 3 years later they don't have anything. Those rapid changes don't happen that quickly. So you take a look at brands. A lot of brands take the brand equity out for years and years and years and just draw it down, and they're still in business.
Hmm.
I remember early in my career, my first head, the first or second head, went to a thing about the disintermediation of travel, and how the GDSs were dead. And this is a long time ago. The GDSs are not dead. And
Hmm.
I think the average for the industry was about 10% of the business. Now it's around 5 or 6. A long time for just a half. Now it's gone down in half, but it's a long time. So look, I might see the writing on the wall where AI and LLMs and everyone having their own agents and digital assistants that can be personalized, that can bypass everything. You know, could it happen in 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, but that'll be 1% of the people. I think big companies aren't going to sit there and not create value. And Expedia, Booking.com are great companies, and C Trip and everyone else that's out there. They'll create value, and they'll take care of that stuff for a lot of people for a long time.
Well, agree with you, Andrew. I think there's a lot of very smart leadership at a lot of these businesses, and I think they're continuing to evolve their solutions because they're paying attention to what's going on in the market and are continuing to build new capabilities that are supportive of how the business is evolving as well. So I agree with you. I don't think that we should ever write anyone off. That they figure it out and they want to make sure
Yeah,
that
they will.
they survive and actually bring value. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about tech partners, though, because of some of the
Sure.
seats that you have been in, because I often think everyone is going through this process where they've got multiple players where they get to choose. And I'm just wondering if there's any advice you would offer to our audience in terms of when you're sitting at the table trying to choose a tech partner for whatever that might be, loyalty, distribution, property management, any of those things. What are the 2 or 3 things that you think that the person that's driving the selection has to get right?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I guess was cursed or blessed, depends on. I was interim CIO at Omni for about 7, 8, 9 months at one point too. So
Wow.
I've always been on the fringe of it, and I've had the ability to select partners too throughout my career. First and foremost is the track record. Um, have they delivered? There's a lot of companies out there that promise a lot, but if you take a look at their track record and how they've performed, If they haven't delivered for others, they're not going to deliver for you. If they're always late, they're always, there's companies out there that have been around for a long time that some of them just never deliver. And understanding that, I still sometimes am shocked when a big company picks someone like that, because it just doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The other one is it future proof? Am I not only solving today's problems, but am I trying to solve tomorrow's?
Mm-hmm.
Will this scale with me? Will it still, is the people I'm working with, do they have a vision? Are they moving in the same direction that I believe the industry is going or my needs are going? I think that's very, very important. And then, last is cost isn't everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you go for the lowest bidder, you chances are will fail. Now, sometimes you get the golden everything, and everything lines up and it's the cheapest and best. And with some disruptive technology, that is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But take a look at really what you're getting is the value there, is the customer service there. You have the support. If something breaks, are are they going to be there for you? That I think is really, really important, because I have dealt with vendors in the past that they just, you have 2,000 tickets sitting there and they're not, for 2 years, some of
Yeah.
them. And that is not helpful. You're losing money every day.
I think, well, I love all those points that you're making, because I do think the deliverability and really doing very deep reference checks with people that you trust is really important, because I do think that understanding of how the business materializes and if they were able to, meet their promises. I also love that aspect of are they future proofing and are they going to scale with you? Because I do think really unpacking that and understanding the people that are associated with continuing to evolve the business, that's really important, because there's a lot of companies out there that are status quo that aren't going to be able to deliver as the business evolves. And I really do think that piece of price is important, but it may not be the most important thing, because I agree with you. If you don't get the continued support that you need to keep the business going, and they don't have the right kind of success teams associated with you, that's a big deal. So I really thank you for that, because I know it comes down to the basics, but it really is meaning you do your homework as you're looking at the selection, and really have some rigor around that process of validating what they're presenting to you. I'm wondering if we can move on a little bit, Andrew, because I want to talk about your time with HSMAI. And I do want to approach this very thoughtfully, because during your tenure, when you were the chair of the board, the organization experienced the loss of Bob Gilbert, who meant so much to so many of us across the industry. And I know that put enormous pressure on you, because you were the chair and you had to keep the lights on and really figure things out. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that meant in terms of the personal kind of elements that you had to contend with, as well as like all of the leadership associated with HSMAI.
Yeah, look, on a personal, from that aspect, it was obviously extremely difficult. Knew Bob for many years. We were friends. It was that was really tough. I think also because I knew Bob and knew what HSMI meant to him, that kind of made me double down. I have to make this work. I have to make it right. And I was so fortunate that the staff was amazing. They all stepped up, and they were hurting, and they knew, and worked for about 20 plus 30 years. I mean, a long, long time. And the rest of the board and the executive committee were just fantastic, and helping take some burden off, because it was tough. I was not too long, under a year in my current job, so uh, dealing with that, trying to make sure that the organization stayed, not just current but thrived going forward. We're about to hit our 100th year anniversary here next year, so I want to make sure we have everything for that, and just try to make Bob proud. I guess that was always in the background. It was a difficult time, but just working extra, I guess, for Bob, for the people, the staff. I mean, they were yeah, it was difficult, but rewarding. I think we've gotten to a good place there. We are set up for the uh 100-year anniversary. I think he'd be very, very proud of what we've been able to do, and especially with the new launch of the Bob Gilbert Award. So that's a big thing in his honor. So I'm proud of that.
Well, I'd like to thank you for that, Andrew, because I do know it just put enormous pressure on you in terms of the time commitment and then also just tending to everybody emotionally, because there was a lot of people that were extremely engaged with Bob, and everybody was devastated by his journey
Yeah.
and also just his loss because he'd been at the forefront for so long. But I do think you handled it very admirably. And quite honestly, I often thought about a new job and balancing all the demands of what that requires and doing everything that you did so thoughtfully. So I would like to thank
Well,
you. I
thank you.
think Bob would be very proud. And I know you did very well by his family and the team too, in terms of giving them the time to sort through some of the emotional things, but also keep the business going in such a positive direction. So thank
No,
you.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So I'd like to move forward and talk a little bit about the future generation because this is always something that we like to think about. And if you were sitting advising sort of those future leaders in terms of what's going to matter most in terms of their personal development and professional development to keep them vital in the next decade, what would be your words of wisdom that you would offer to them?
Um, it's not that different from when I was coming up, but it is different. So I mean, it's stay curious, learn as much as you can, work your ass off in your 20s. Just do everything you can. Say yes. Do what you can to learn as much. There's a lot of remote work, so that's an issue. So can you? I just had someone from my fraternity. I'm involved with my national fraternity. Someone from the Ohio chapter said, "Hey, can I just pick your brain? I want to network. Do that. Be curious. Get on." Get with people. You're not going to be around the water cooler. You're not going to get the osmosis of sitting in and getting invited to a meeting they might not have should have got into, but they got you in there and you're learning a lot. You're not going to have those opportunities. So, take advantage of it. Make the opportunities for yourself. And I think the people who are curious and work hard will always, move forward. I think it's going to be a different time. I think AI is going to change things. The opportunity to become an analyst and learn a lot. Some of those jobs are going to go away, but there'll be new jobs that are created. So, stay on top of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Andrew. And I love the way that you framed up in terms of really trying to insert yourself in terms of some of the networking opportunities. Because I just think about my own career, and I know yours is not all that different. That so much of it came through just being on the job and the osmosis of watching, and it was being in
Yeah.
rooms where you got to observe, and so there has to be a way to close that gap. I'm just wondering if there's anything sort of beyond that learning journey and, that investment in terms of building relationships and networking, if there's any kind of subject matter expertise that people should really be focused on in terms of their learning journey.
Yeah, it's going to be less around tasks and more around leadership, more around
Mhm.
strategy, more around how things work, not doing the work. There's going to be, I mean, and that's going to change and continue to change, especially as robotics comes in. And if and I've got kids who are 24 and 27. The world's going to be completely different by the time they're my age. And how is that going to journey me? I think uh, it's still going to come down to there still be salespeople. You still have nothing starts until someone sells something. You have to have strategy and where's the company going and where are things happening. I think how that comes about could be very different. It could be major companies, could be millions of little entrepreneurship companies where people carve out their own niche. So if I knew, I'd probably be betting betting with some stock. But I think it's going to be very, very. It's going to be an interesting time. There's so much change that's happening. I do believe, when the computer started in the 70s and 80s, when it changed everything. I think AI, and everyone talks about AI, but I really do think AI will change everything like that. That same type of sea change where you just everything changes. And I was on stage a little while ago with some students and asked how'd your career go and what did you pick? And 80% of the jobs I've had didn't exist when I started.
Mhm.
So think about that. I mean, the revenue management didn't exist, digital marketing didn't exist, distribution strategy. None of those things really even were around. So I don't know what it's going to be. All I know is if you work hard, you're smart, you just put a full effort towards it, good things will happen.
I think that's really good advice. And I think it gives people comfort, Andrew. And I love the way you framed up all the things that were so meaningful in your career that really just evolved over time. And you were prepared. You obviously had people that believed in you. You had done the work. So you were invited in to grow some of those opportunities. And I agree with you. We don't know what that future is, but it is around staying really relevant in terms of your learning journey. And I do think a lot of it has to do with respecting how important a network is and how, having people trust you and building, that confidence through delivering
Hmm.
with the partners that you work with, how it really does build your career. So, and you are a testament to that. When I think about all of the places that you have been and just the intersectionality of some of the businesses that you've led, Andrew, that really speaks to the kind of confidence that people had that you could deliver for them. So it's an amazing, amazing career that you've had. And I know you're not done yet.
Thank you.
So, if I may, I'd like to express my appreciation to you, Andrew, and just really helping us connect the dots because I do think your background across all of these different pieces of the industry is really meaningful to our audience, and I really like some of the practical advice that you've given in terms of where we're headed, and I know that there's so many leaders right now that are challenged with the complexity that they're facing. So some of that advice that you have given and the comfort that you've extended in terms of how to navigate change, I think is meaningful. So thank you. And I also just want to thank you for all of your leadership to our industry because I know you were chair, but you're still now past chair of HSMAI and you do a lot of work with a lot of the different associations that are voluntary, but it's very meaningful that you continue to give back. So thank you for all that you do for all of us. And if I could just close off with all of our audience and thank you for joining us. And if today's conversation resonated with you, I invite you to explore more interviews like this one with Andrew today on itspersonalstories.com. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate it.